And we're joined by Steve Bone with, we should be dressed in sackcloth and ashes, shouldn't we, Steve, the pair of us? And plenty of fans are, what with recent results. But you and I, what? Are we just optimists, or do we know something they don't?
I'm not sure that we know anything that they don't, but we are eternal optimists, aren't we? You have to be watching Pompey, I've always found. You have to try to look on the bright side. Yeah, there's been, last Saturday wasn't good. Bad result. Bad performance, particularly for the first 25 minutes until the little break when we improved after that. And that coming after the defeat at Sheffield United made it a really bad week, and it's left us in the bottom three. But I'm surprised at how much doom and gloom there's been since then, and at the strength of some of it. Because I don't think you have to judge our season so far just by those last two games. So far we are at about the same point we were at this stage last season. We've got the points in a different order. This year we started steadily and we've dropped off a little bit, and we've I think it's what is it, 1 win and 1 draw in our last 8, which isn't good enough. That's relegation form if you carry that on. But we've beaten some good teams. We've beaten Millwall, Preston and Middlesbrough at home. We won at Oxford. We have had wins. We've had some good draws on the road at Leicester, West Brom, Southampton. We haven't suddenly become a bad team overnight. There's work to do. There's players to buy in January, but let's not write off our chances already. We're in the bottom three now. There's plenty of time to get out of it.
There's a young lad who writes for the BBC, and he's got his own TV channel on YouTube, and I think he's got his own media organisation. It's a low-flying jet on its way to Goodwood. I'll just pause for that. Sorry about that, Steve. And he posted the most doom and gloom laden piece, and it was attributed to the BBC, which they ought to be careful. He said that was the worst Pompey performance he has seen, and that we're going to have to spend an awful lot of money, or else we're going down. That's taking it too far, isn't it?
I think it is. I don't think that's the worst performance we've seen. Even in John Messino's reign. People forget we lost 4-0 at home to Blackpool. We lost 3-0 at home to Leyton Orient the season we got promoted. There have been some bad performances, as there are with any team. Even with a team that's going for promotion, we'll turn in some bad performances. The first 25 minutes was as bad as anything, you might say, but we did look better after that. We competed after that. We started to get more of the ball, and we got it forward. We didn't really look like scoring, I didn't think. And I don't disagree that we need to spend in January. I think everybody would accept that. It's how you spend it, isn't it? It's not necessarily how much you spend even. There's a lot of people saying we need to stop doing it on the cheap. We have spent money on players, and not all of them are living up to their price tags at the moment. But yeah, I just think I'm surprised at the strength of that. Really, I don't think things are as bad as some have painted it. If we lose our next 4 or 5, then maybe we are in a real battle to stay up. There's a lot of talk. People are very quick to say, "Oh, Norwich are down there; they'll get out of it." Sheffield United, Blackburn, they're bound to get out of it. Well, they won't all get out of it. We are in the bottom 3 at the moment. Sheffield Wednesday, you would think, are probably going to struggle to get out of that bottom 3 or off bottom spot, even with the points they've lost. We have to make sure we are soon, before too long, in that little mid-table group. It's a big group, isn't it? From second down to 16th is a very tight table. If we were at the bottom of that group, I think we'd be happy at the moment. That's the first aim. Get yourselves up to the next little gang of teams. Get yourself above Oxford, Swansea, Blackburn if you can. We're playing a couple of them soon, and then go from there.
Let's talk about that 25th minute turnaround of the game, because it was just really fortunate in a sense that Schmidt picked up a minor injury and had to have treatment, in which case John Messino had an opportunity to do some reorganising. The last thing Pompey would do is stage an injury of their goalkeeper in order to have a tactics talk. But if a team were going to do that, Steve, if you see what how I'm trying to couch it, if a team wanted to have a tactics talk, they would need to get a message to the goalkeeper for him to appear to injure himself next time he was in the action. Am I right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but it's I suppose if you wanted to employ those sort of tactics, it's probably not that difficult to prearrange it, is it? If you're telling your goalkeeper to look out, you keep an eye. When he's not having to keep his eye on the ball, keep your eye on the bench and see if there's a little signal from somebody or something like that. Not suggesting that we would do such things, but there's been talk this week, and not just because of that incident, but there's talk in the past week or so, isn't there, of this becoming quite a common thing. Goalkeepers getting injured, and while they're being treated, they obviously don't have to go off for 30 seconds or a minute because they're goalkeepers. While they're being treated, off trot the other 10 players to go and get some new instructions from the manager. I do think the way to stop it would be to give goalies the same rule as outfield players and say, if you go down and you get treated, and the physio has to come on, off you go for 30 seconds. And you can put an outfield player in goal while the goalkeeper is off the field, and that might be complicated because you'd have to let that sub goalie change his top and put some gloves on or whatever, and you then have to swap again after 30 seconds or a minute. But I bet that would soon stamp it out.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. I was watching on television and they were showing extended close-ups of Schmidt, and he was clearly sharing a joke with the physio.
Was he? Yeah.
They were laughing away.
Yeah, it's one of these things in football that seems to be happening quite a lot, doesn't it? I suppose if one team sees another team do it and it's successful.
But here's the thing I want to get you to embrace. It worked. So what was said?
It did work, didn't it? Because we did look a different team, and you can't imagine the instructions in that little team talk would have been greatly different from the instructions given before the game. So I think it must have just been a bit of effing and blinding and a sort of metaphorical boot up the backside.
Yes.
To say you've been terrible this first 25 minutes. You need to start getting to the ball first, winning tackles, playing sensible passes. Don't play loose passes. Just go back to basics. Remember what we did 7 days earlier against Millwall. We got on the front foot. We hassled them and we harried them, and we made it our game. It was about us, not them. And I think after that little break, we did that a lot more. I know we still lost 1-0, and it wasn't entirely successful, but we did look much better after that break, didn't we?
Yeah, a little bit of a minor.
It's a strange one.
Shouting spree can work. I remember playing school football when our PE teacher used to say, because I went to a grammar school, "Digitum extractum, boys."
Maybe that's what John said to the players last Saturday.
Well,
in his own accent. I don't know.
Quite possibly.
It's a little bit of the right cajoling goes a long way sometimes.
Now then, I'm really interested to find out your take on all this talk about the transfer window, what we did right, what we did wrong in the summer, whether Rich Hughes has got the plot 2020 vision or whether he's losing the plot, how much money, if any, John must... All of that. Off you go.
Well, at the moment, you'd have to say the summer window wasn't a great success, wouldn't you? Because if you look at how many of the summer signings are regulars in the team, it's not many. The two most successful, probably so far, you would say, are Segacic and Yang. I would suggest Segacic you can't argue with. He scored 4 goals. If I think he was given that goal against Millwall, wasn't he? Scored 4 goals, looks a threat, and you'd have him in the starting 11 most weeks. Yang looked good when he was starting. Scored a couple of goals, important goals as well. You wouldn't mind any week where he's in the starting lineup. It's some of the other business at the moment the jury's out on, isn't it? Because you've brought in a lot of players. You brought in a few players that we've hardly seen at all, and you've brought in a few that we've seen bits and pieces of, and they haven't impressed too much. I mean, the obvious ones that you've got big question marks over are Bianchini. You've probably currently got question marks over people like Swift and Chaplin. As much as they were welcomed in the summer, it hasn't really worked for them yet. Is that sort of bad recruitment, or is that just sort of bad form from them since they got here. I don't know. You don't remember anybody arguing when we signed them. You know, they were seen as good signings, weren't they? Those two coming back. Josh Knight is another one. You know, he's in the team at the moment. He's doing okay, but he's not really added anything to our defensive strength, I don't think, overall. And most people would say that Shaughnessy will be back in place of him when he's fit again. So probably more misses than hits from the summer window. There's some that have still got time to prove themselves, and hopefully they will. We haven't seen Uma yet, have we? Franco Uma up front, still injured, still 3 or 4 weeks away, so we can't really judge him yet. Although you know, there's people saying that why have we signed a player who's that far from being fit? You know, was that a good idea? And that's a fair question, I think. So it is a big January. Yeah, it's a big January for the squad and for Richard Hughes and his scouts. Got to get a couple right, haven't we? Got to get a couple of big signings, and they need to be people that can come in and get straight into that team.
They're being remarkably open and honest, John Messino and Rich Hughes, in their various pronouncements, saying with some, you know, specifically we're going to sign between 3 and 6 new players. That came out yesterday. That they will be looking at a couple of loan players. They've got a space for a loan player, but also that some people are going to have to leave. And I would like to have found out a little bit more about what he meant by that.
Yeah. I suppose it's a kind of, it needs to be, because of the size of the squad you're allowed, it needs to be a one in, one out sort of January, doesn't it? I suppose anybody we sign needs to be a replacement in the 25 for somebody who's in there at the moment. So you're probably looking at, you know, if they sign a couple of players on loan, you're probably looking at losing a couple of loan players, and Bianchini would be a contender. It's not impossible that Chaplin would be a contender to go back to Ipswich in January if he doesn't sort of fire well in December. And anyone else you buy, you know, if you bringing somebody in permanently, from the squad size point of view, and maybe from the wage bill point of view as well, is going to need to be as a replacement for somebody who's already here and in that 25. So there'll probably be some hard decisions to be made. Might be 1 or 2 decisions that are not particularly popular with fans that are made in terms of who goes. There's always the possibility, again, you know, it's a transfer window, as well as us wanting to buy players, there could be clubs around wanting to buy our players, our better ones. We might have, you know, hopefully not, but we might have more of the Murphy saga. You know, is he going to go? I know he signed a new contract, a longer contract here, but that doesn't mean there won't be interest in him. He still had a good first half of the season, and that changes things again, doesn't it? If you do lose a player that you don't want to lose, that adds to the pressure in terms of who you're going to bring in their place. So it's going to be it's going to be fascinating January, but could be quite a tricky one for us as well.
I wonder what you made of a particularly standout sentence that Michael Eisner delivered to the Trust when he spoke via video. He said, and he was absolutely categorical. He's been accused of breaking promises before. He doesn't. He hasn't broken a promise. He sometimes says our intention is. Well, that's different from making a promise. But he did say categorically, didn't he, we're not going down. Now, how can he influence that after the January window? What else can he do? Yeah.
Did he? This is a genuine question. Was he quite as categoric this year in saying that as he was last year? Because my impression was that he wasn't. Last year, it was very much, we're not going to get relegated. In that end of argument, and that's all I've got to say on the matter. And people took that as well. That's a bold thing to say at that stage, because he didn't say I don't think we'll go down. He said we're not going to get relegated. I wasn't sure if this season's pronouncement was quite as clear as that. Maybe it was, and because we'd heard it before, it didn't seem to be as clear. But I didn't think it was quite. He clearly thinks we're not going down. And he's happy to say that. But this year's address if you compare it to last year's, didn't to me seem quite as I wasn't quite as convinced by it. Maybe it was the manner in which it was done. He did it as a sort of conversation with Breck, didn't he? We didn't have Eric involved this year. He did it with Breck after we'd beaten Millwall, and I just thought some of it was a bit wishy-washy actually in places. But at the same time, he certainly doesn't think we're going down. And after January, after he's opened his checkbook in January, there's not a lot he can do to influence, is it? It's all in the hands of those players and the manager and the coaching staff. So it is still, even if he's not saying it quite as categorically as last year, and that's maybe open to debate, it is still quite a brave thing to say, because 3 teams out of 24 in that division are going to get relegated.
Exactly. Well, 2 effectively, aren't they, with the Sheffield Wednesday thing? And I would have thought that the Sheffield Wednesday thing is something that would remind all those fans who are old enough, and most of us are, just where financial inabilities, financial failings, reaching too far, spending money you haven't got, where that can wind you up, because we've been there.
We have, not that long ago. 2012 was our last period in administration. So we know what it's like to have points deducted. We know what it's like to be adrift at the bottom of the league, and we know what it's like to be relegated from this division, from the division above and from the division below. We were relegated through all 3 between 2010 and 2013, weren't we? So I think because of what we went through, sorry, Archie's woken up. I think because of what we went through, fans generally speaking, Pompey fans don't want silly money spent and thrown at a project that's not sustainable.
Right.
But I think your average Pompey fan would think that after 7 years in League One, we should at least be aiming to be safe in the Championship and not go back down again. I don't see a grand clamour from people expecting us to be promoted to the Premier League in 5 minutes' time, this season or next season or even the season after that. But I think people want us to be a solid Championship outfit, and ideally not one that is sort of teetering around the bottom 3 at this stage of the season. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because they're Norwich. You ask Norwich fans at the start of the season, what are your hopes for the season? They'd all have said, let's see if we can get promoted. Playoffs. If you'd asked Sheffield United at the start of the season, they'd have said the same. There they are, 3 places above us. Leicester City fans would not have wanted to be 16th in the first week of December, but that is where they are. They've lost as many as they've won. So that's the nature of the Championship, isn't it? No, you can't guarantee success at this level very easily. It costs money, and it takes a lot of talent, and it takes a bit of luck as well.
Excellent, Steve. That's very solid. Thank you. Real meat and potatoes stuff. Very, very nourishing as well. But can we just move briefly onto the trifle?
Yes, let's.
Okay, so
up, actually,
this is this wonderful conspiracy theory, which I'm fanning the flames because it's fun. Okay, and there's not an awful lot happening. So John Messino and Rich Hughes and Andy Cullen went for a quiet, discreet drink a while ago, and they said, "Look, we want to get some money out of Michael Eisner. We want the club to be spending for all sorts of reasons. Okay, it'll suit all of us 3 bigwigs if Pompey are flashing the cash. If we have a bad run up into the January window, that's going to force his hand, isn't it?"
Is that really? Has somebody really come out and said that? And does somebody really believe that?
I'm passing it around as if it's worth talking about.
Yeah. No way would they. You don't. You might. The only thing that might happen at a football club, and it happened with Harry Redknapp when he was here, and some people think it happened with John Messino a couple of times last season, is that you will play in a game that you don't think you're going to win anyway, away from home. You might play a lineup that looks a little bit weak and is a little bit weak because you're resting a couple of players, as if to show the owners that this is my team we need investment, we need more players, we need better players, and so on and so forth. Harry Redknapp did it quite successfully at the time where Milan was bringing in Sasha Gajdamak, and he then splashed out a lot of cash in the January 2006 window. But I don't think a manager and a head of recruitment and a chief exec, either individually or collectively, are ever going to really decide to lose a few games so as more money is thrown at a project. They're all individually and collectively, they're all quite capable of going to the owners and saying, we're struggling, we need more money, we need more players, we need to replace player A with player B, we need to spend this amount on transfers, we need to spend this amount on wages. They can all say that anyway. They don't have to play games in order to get that funding. We always hear, don't we, from John and from Richard, that whenever they ask for a player or a bit of extra funding for a player or wages, they generally are backed. And if that's what they say, you have to believe them.
You do, but what's your gut feeling about when they went to him and said, we want to buy Abu Kamara, or we want to buy Alex Robertson? I think they probably did. I'd love to know what you think happened. I think they probably did, and that got knocked back, and that doesn't get discussed in public.
Well, that no one has ever quite confirmed that happened, I suppose, have they? I mean, I agree with you. I think Pompey probably were interested either at the same time or different times in both of those players, and it hasn't happened. Has it not happened because the owners didn't want to spend that amount of money? It may well be the case, but then would the manager and head of recruitment continue to say quite regularly in interviews, the owners always back us, or would they dodge the question a bit if they had been knocked back that clearly? I don't know. Don't know about the politics of what goes on behind closed doors and what has to stay behind closed doors, and we'll never know. We'll never know all the ins and outs of it unless John Messino, when he retires, writes his biography and tells us every last detail of which players he wanted and which he couldn't get. The other thing is, you could break the bank, well, not break the bank, but you could spend 3 or 4 million on a player, and the fans would be delighted. Well, depending on who it was, the fans would be delighted that sort of money was being spent on a player, and all the package to go with it, and the wages and everything else. One big money signing, even in the position we're in, doesn't guarantee you anything, does it?
No.
You can put all your eggs in one basket, and
Absolutely.
the basket's got holes in it. So it's a tricky one. But yeah, I think the owners know they're going to be under pressure in January. There'll be some pressure from the chief exec and the manager and Richard Hughes, and there'll also be a lot of pressure from fans for them to show their hand a little bit and show that they're serious about Pompey being a competitive side at this level. And that's why it's such a big month for everybody.
Yes. I must dig out the address of Michael Eisner via video link to the trust, because one other thing that was quoted, and I think Rich Hughes picked it up somewhere else, is that he bought a controlling interest in a baseball team, and the fans were clamouring for him to spend money. So he spent millions, I think, on a first baseman. And the first thing he did, the first baseman, was fall over in the dugout and therefore be injured for a whole season. Then when he came back, he was injured by a snow machine. It's not clear whether it was a snow-making machine or a snow-clearing machine. And so they had to get rid of him. And they then went and started recruiting youngsters cheap and ended up winning the World Series. And when you've got a story like that to tell, it makes for pretty convincing stuff, doesn't it? If you're Rich Hughes asking for more money or John Messino doing the same.
Yeah, it's a good story, although it's a bit of a leap if the owners are saying that because that happened in that sport, in that part of the world, X number of years ago, that should then be their policy for another sport in another era in another part of the world. That's quite a leap, isn't it? I think you can. It's an interesting insight into their background and their thinking, isn't it? But I don't think too many fans, after the last couple of games, were too impressed by it, to be honest. And I think they're thinking, well, that sounds like just an excuse for him not to be going in a different direction with Pompey. But at the same time, it's not that long ago since we won League One. We got out of League One with the Eisner's transfer policy and staffing policy being what it was. So it can work. Will it work every time and at every level? Not so sure.
Okay, let's move on to the Charlton game, which is now quite close, 12:30 Saturday afternoon. So people will be on Pompey Sound and on the podcast listening to your thoughts and perhaps your prediction as well. But you're a brave man, and I know you'll see it through. What do you know about Charlton? What do you think we can expect going to Charlton? And have you got any idea about your final score?
I'm worried by the fact that Charlton are on a really bad run of form, because when it does feel like when Pompey play a team that haven't won for 6 months or 8 years or whatever it is, Pompey are a good team for them to play, because so many teams seem to break their duck against Pompey. And you sometimes get individual players. It was Patrick Bamford last week, was still looking for his Sheffield United goal. Along come Pompey, he gets his first Sheffield United goal. Sheffield United hadn't won at home for a little while. They have now. So we'd probably rather not be playing Charlton. We'd probably be rather playing in Coventry this weekend, because they've won 8 in a row or something and scored 40 goals. But having said that, on the downside, it's a 12:30 kickoff. And we were discussing earlier, weren't we? Pompey are currently not very good at 12:30 kickoffs.
No.
Don't know why, but we've played, I think, Saturday 12:30s this season. Played 4, lost 4. 3. I think it's 3 at home. 3 at home, 1 away. I think so. We've lost all 4, but that's a stat that might be nothing. It might be just coincidence. It's a stat that we need to break. You keep playing at 12:30, eventually you'll win one. All of which leads me to what I think is going to happen at Charlton. I'm actually going to take the next 2 games, because we're playing Swansea on Tuesday. Normal teams would probably go and lose to Charlton and beat Swansea. Swansea being only just above us in the table, in fact on goal difference. I think we're going to do the opposite, and I think we're going to go and win at Charlton and then lose at Swansea.
Gut feel, yeah?
Yes, yeah. A little 1-0 win at Charlton, I'm going to go for, and let's say a 2-1 defeat at Swansea.
So you're saying 3 points one way or another?
Yeah, 3 points out of 6, yeah. And to be honest, if we can go through, we've got 6 games in December, if we can win 3 and lose 3, or get the same number of points by winning 2, drawing 3 and losing 1, I'll be quite happy with that, because I think we've had 1 win per calendar month so far this season, and we need to up that to 2, and then we need to up it to 3, and if you can get 2 or 3 wins a month between now and the end of the season, we'll be okay.
Just want to end very quickly on one nice whimsical note. If you'd asked me, did I think it was likely up in the Championship when we were promoted from the League One, that in the not too distant future, the player that we most missed when he got injured was Connor Ogilvie? But he is, isn't he?
Yeah, we're certainly missing him.
Yeah.
Because he's been such an ever-present. I would personally argue that we're missing the other Connor Shaughnessy, more than we're missing Connor Ogilvie, because I don't think we've had Williams and Swanson both filling in at left back, haven't we, since Ogilvie got injured? I think Boat play a little while there in one game and he came on, can't remember. So I'd love Ogilvie to be very quickly back from injury, and knowing him, he probably will be back quicker than he's supposed to be, because he's a tough old boot, and he won't want to be out for too long. But actually, I quite like Williams at left back. I thought when he came on in that game and Ogilvie had gone off injured, I thought he did okay. Gets stuck in, gets forward a bit. And Swanson as well, considering it's his wrong side and he's not had too many games in his career so far at left back, I thought he'd done okay. Yes, come back soon, Conor Ogilvie, but come back even sooner, Conor Shaughnessy is my message.
Good message. Okay, Steve, thank you very much indeed for your wit and wisdom, as I always say, and look forward to talking to you soon.
Look forward to the next one.